Hi everybody, my name is Alyssa Riddle, and today I will be doing my project on the challenges of Black trans women in prison. So, not only am I going to be discussing the challenges that Black transgender women face while being in prison, but I will also be talking about their experiences throughout the whole criminal justice system, whether it be interactions with the police or their experience within the juries and with judges, as well as how sentencing is affected when it comes to being transgender. I would like to begin and discuss kind of what the criminal justice system is and how it is intended to have its purpose. So we know that the criminal justice system was put in place to keep peace as well as prevent crime and mainly just to keep the public safe and make sure individuals feel safe and have a sense of security. We also know that there are certain groups, such as groups with different races and having different ages as well as gender, that also feel that they are not safe and they are not protected when it comes to law enforcement. I would like to now talk about how transgender people play a role in having not the best experience when it comes to law enforcement. So, transgender, the term transgender means that it's a person does not identify with the gender that they were born with. So, with that being said, we can see how that does not fit the social norm, especially in the ways where a law enforcement officer may experience a different kind of ideology than everybody else. So they tend to have ideas that follow that social norm, and they don't know how to they don't know how to communicate and understand when other people that don't fit the social norms. And that's not just with transgender individuals. That's also with a lot of people with the LGBT community. So when it comes to transgender identities and how police interact with them, we know that it's not always positive. In most cases, transgender identities, people, especially Black transgender people, they don't always have positive experiences with law enforcement. So, as we know, Black transgender people, as well as Black cisgender people, they tend to have negative experiences within our law enforcement and our police officers due to racial discrimination. And on top of racial discrimination, now you are adding not fitting that social norm, which puts a negative stereotype and a negative idea about an individual. So some stereotypes that is said would be that transgender people and people part of the LGBTQ community, they are sex offenders and they're dangerous. And these negative stereotypes carry over into how one may look at someone a part of this community, which is not true. So when a police officer looks and they're like, oh, well, this person's dangerous. Well, it's not true. You're basing it off of a stereotype. So now, if you look and you see, like, okay, because this population has such a bad rep for themselves, or a community has such a bad rep for themselves, it is not necessarily going to be the easiest thing for a police officer to be like, oh, this person is not like the same, which is not wrong, or it's not right for them to do. It's wrong for them to believe that every stereotype is true without knowing what they're doing. And one of the articles that I mentioned in my paper, it was noted that most transgender adults were arrested because they believe that they were sex workers, or a lot of them are just stopped because of solely based on suspicion, not for any reason. It was suspicious of them, which already puts a negative idea or a negative concept on the transgender community. It also plays a part when an individual goes seeking for help, because transgender women are one of the highest groups of women that experience sexual assaults. So when they go to police officers and to seek help for things that were done to them, and they get their back turned on them, it doesn't create that trust and that security that we were talking about at the beginning. So, in addition to the negative experiences that they feel and they experience when it comes to police, they also have negative experiences in the court system as well. So, a lot of people that are part of this transgender community, they like to hide their identity for as long as possible when it comes to the courts. This being said, when people find out that they are part of the transgender community, lots of discriminatory words are being used, calling them it, or having the idea, oh, because they're part of the LGBT community, they're automatically a predator. They're already sexually deviant. They already have all these diseases. So they create the stereotype, and it's making this idea of one person and comparing it to the rest, which is not true. Instead of looking at the individual as an individual for what they've done or what they could have experienced for themselves. So that creates a negative idea with transphobia and homophobia, that these stereotypes are stuck with them if their identity is revealed. When it comes to black women, black transgender women, and even the black community as a whole, they are already given a harsher sentencing compared to a cisgender white person or even a white transgender person. So when we look at being a black transgender woman, it is hard to not have a negative experience when it comes to it, or when it comes to them, and it comes to their experience in the criminal justice system. Next, I would like to talk about the transgender identities in the correction system, so in the prisons. As we know from their experience in the police, with the police officers, and their experience within the jury and the judge and the courts, their experience is going to be negative going into the correction system. Not only are they now being placed into prisons that, say you're a transgender woman, you are a man transgender or going to be a woman, and you're getting placed into a a facility that's predominantly all men, now you're risking the cause of having being sexually assaulted and having being harassed by other inmates, and not only inmates, but now you're being harassed by correctional officers. So it's not a positive experience when it comes to that. When it comes to also healthcare and how healthcare, what healthcare they receive. So a lot of them would need to take medication or hormone medication, hormone therapy. Well, it's not a given that the healthcare providers are going to do that. So they could deny the service, or they could give them an irregular schedule, which not only affects them physically, but now you're putting a mental stress on them, and it affects them mentally. There also have been times where they self-report themselves as HIV positive because they're getting assaulted and they are getting harassed within the correction system. In addition to being harassed by other inmates and having their health care not be as well as it should be, but now they're getting put in solitary confinement, making an individual carry more stress than they have to be. And this is all having negative effects on them. So the role of intersectionality fits into the Black transgender women in prison and within the correction system and the criminal justice system as a whole, is because it's intersecting two lines. You're intersecting sexuality and you're intersecting race. So you're also intersecting gender. And that's where the experience becomes worse. So since you intersected your gender and how you're intersecting the idea that transgender and you're now a person of color. You're creating yourself to be a minority group that's already a minority group. So you're being able to make the idea that your experiences are going to be negative because already as two parts, they're already negative in its own. So when you intersect them, it's going to be created to have more shared experiences and problems. Right. And then to end my presentation, I would like to talk about any of my personal insights and reflections. So, I believe that transgender women, Black transgender women, and any transgender person should be given a fair trial when it comes to being convicted, especially when their convictions being based on a stereotype. I believe that you shouldn't place a stereotype and create it for every individual. I think that is one thing that I took from this, as well as in the correction system. I believe that a person should be given the same rights and the same experience that any other inmate is given. The same protection. I believe they should be given more protection. And when it comes to healthcare within the correction system, I think that they deserve to have a better healthcare system. Any of my final thoughts, I believe, were they black transgender women and transgender individuals alone face a lot of challenges already, from stereotypes, from being employed, and just transgender as a whole. I feel they are given having their back turned on them constantly, and I believe that's something that needs to change. All right, thank you guys for listening.